Hello and welcome everyone to today's Association for Manufacturing Excellence webinar titled Adapting Through Digital Transformation. I'm Tim Piotrowski, Marketing and Media Manager for AME, and I'll be your moderator. Today's panelists represent both Canon and Schneider Electric. Kris Tanner has been with Schneider Electric for over 13 years and developed their in-plant print-on-demand as monochrome work transition to digital. Bob Barbera is Senior Marketing Manager of Productions Solutions, and Paul Albano is Senior Manager of Integrated Marketing for Canon USA. Combined, they have 50 years of experience with imaging and solutions for manufacturing, healthcare, law, financial services, and education. A couple quick housekeeping items. You'll be in listen-only mode throughout the webinar and will be muted in your attendee panel on the right side of your screen. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them into your question area and click Submit. We'll review the questions at the end of today's presentation and answer as many as we can. When you log off today, please check your email inbox. In it will be an invitation and a link to fill out a short webinar attendee survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey, as your feedback is very important to us to improve future webinars. And we'll be sending a recorded link for the webinar replay to each of you next week. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Kris, Bob, and Paul, who will present Adapting Through Digital Transformation. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Albano from Canon USA, and we're pleased to present this Canon-sponsored webinar with the Association for Manufacturing Excellence. So taking a look at the agenda this afternoon, our webinar will focus on the topic of digital disruption, including a case study example, how our client in the manufacturing vertical, Schneider Electric, was able to overcome and adapt to digital transformation in their in-plant printing environment with Canon solutions. We'll start with a quick round of introductions, then get right into the event with an overview on what is digital disruption, what is digital transformation, and then we'll introduce Bob Barbera from Canon and Kris Tanner from Schneider Electric to go over how they're able to successfully implement a digital transformation process. So again, my name is Paul Albano, and I'm a senior manager within Canon's integrated marketing division. I've been with the company for over 20 years, and my current responsibilities include vertical marketing, market intelligence, and handling our analyst relationships. Kris Tanner is a manager within Schneider Electric's Solution Support Group in the print-on-demand area, based out of Nashville, Tennessee. And Rob Barbera is a senior marketing manager within Canon's Production Solutions division here at Canon USA, with over 25 years of business consulting and marketing experience in the digital print and communications industry. So what is digital disruption? Disruption happens when an existing industry faces a challenger that offers greater value to their customers in a way that existing firms cannot compete with directly. The digital revolution is breaching the walls of manufacturing as it continues to disrupt media, finance, consumer products, healthcare, and other sectors. The explosion in the use of big data, along with advances in other areas such as artificial intelligence, automation and robotics, and human-machine interaction, are unleashing innovations that will change the nature of manufacturing itself. Industry and academic leaders agree that digital manufacturing technologies will transform every link in the manufacturing value chain, from research and development, supply chain, factory operations, to marketing and sales and service as well. Looking at some data on this slide, digital disruption for manufacturers has become a front and center challenge. 63% of large companies globally currently face high levels of disruption. 44% of large companies globally show severe signs of susceptibility to future disruption. And according to IDC, 30% of all manufacturers will be completely digitally transformed by the end of 2020. And in order to compete and survive, digital transformation is a must. Digital transformation is prompted by three key reasons, obviously: changing competition, changing customer demand, and changing technology. So what is digital transformation? It's the alignment of or investment in new technology and business models to more effectively engage digital customers at every touch point in the customer experience. Business model transformation is about doing new things in new ways that create net new value for employees, for customers, citizens, and business partners. Business transformation involves creating net new value using digital technology. It typically means adopting new business models. Most executives are risk adverse and want their CIO to focus on using digital technology to optimize current business models, regardless of the situation. But the risks of not embracing business transformation are significant, including value propositions that will underwhelm customers, deficiencies in their financial models, and failure to identify all the capabilities needed to deliver on promised benefits. So digital transformation may no longer be an option. According to analysts, digital transformation has already become a requirement for manufacturers moving forward. And digitally transformed companies are lean and super efficient in their business process and will be hard to stop for those who have not been able to make the move yet. So as we cover our case study today, Rob Barbera is going to talk about some of the steps that Canon helped Schneider Electric deploy for them to be successful in their digital transformation process. Rob, would you take us through some of these steps before we go over to the Schneider case study?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, before I kind of go through a little bit the steps, just to help set the stage and the background. If you think about digital disruption, as Paul highlighted, and you think about the world that Kris is managing, and I'm managing within Canon, which is in print communications, there's probably nothing more that's really been disrupted than print. Years ago, people predicted the paperless society. That has not held true. Print is still alive and here, but it definitely has gone through a major transformation. So how we're using print, the types of print communications that in-house print centers like Schneider Electric is providing today has changed, and they've had to adapt and had to become what we call more on demand, increased use of color in communications, increased use of what we call personalization. So a tremendous amount of transformation that's been going on within our printing industry as far as how to adapt within organizations, maintain relevancy, and with that, maintain the productivity and efficiencies in their operations. And like any other process, when looking at how to adapt to the new digital printing solutions and workflows, there's the standard type process that you really need to kind of analyze what you're doing today, what you're going to need for the future, and then you can start to look at redesigning and developing the correct solutions for your operations, implementing those solutions, and then continuing monitoring them and continuing to look for ways to automate the process. So with that, I will turn it over to Kris to talk about Schneider Electric, and then I'll come back in a few minutes and explain a little bit how we helped Schneider Electric with some of our services to help them with their redesign and analyzing their operations.
Okay.
All right. Yep. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me join in today. Paul, you can go ahead and move on to the next slide there. Skip the introductions and just get right into it. But one thing I always cover anytime I talk to a group that's outside of the company is just take a few minutes to explain who Schneider Electric is. It's a very large company, as you can see by the numbers there. Simply put, we're the leader in digital transformation of energy management and automation, creating connected technologies that reshape industries, transform cities, and enrich lives. Okay, so that's the propaganda statement. We get into the nitty-gritty of what we do here. You can see across the globe, 27% of our operation is in North America. Again, 27% balanced out with North America over in Western Europe, a little bit higher in the Asia Pacific areas, and then the rest of the world comprises that 18%. Over 100 plus countries with 142,000 plus employees and revenues just over $24 billion in euros in 2017. So a fairly large company that a lot of people haven't heard about, but you'll hear, or you'll see on the next slide, Paul, a lot of the different companies that comprise Schneider Electric that you may be aware of, folks like APC or Square D Company, Xantrex, Pelco is a security camera and building automation company, Invensis, TAC, and those are just a small sampling of some of the larger companies under the Schneider umbrella. powering things like data centers and hospitals, public buildings, utilities, retail businesses. We are in the residential market as well, and traffic and security. So I can tell you now, if you are carrying a smartphone, the data center powering the information coming to and from your smartphone is powered by a data center that is ran with Schneider Electric equipment. We work for all of the major folks, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, all the Microsoft, all the rest of them. From a retail standpoint, if you've ever been into a Target or a Walgreens or a Walmart, places like that, you're interacting with our equipment before you ever make it in the door. We are one of the bigger companies that you interact with on a daily basis and never realize it. Paul, we can go on to the next slide there. So a little bit about my department, and I won't go through the entire timeline off to the right-hand side, but as Bob was saying, we are the in-plant print support for North America, providing a low-cost and high-quality print solution for internal teams that's a very quick turnaround, and obviously trying to maintain a consistent product every time we support the over 500 different departments that we are behind. Primary products that we are out there working on are engineering documentation, bound copies, variable data labels, posters and banners, and then what we call branded environments, which would be all the visuals inside an office building when you walk in that show off the brand and the mission of the company. So all the way from the first doors that have vinyl lettering on it to murals and things like that inside a building. So we support all of that. And quickly looking on the right-hand side of this slide, the evolution, the department, which at the time was called National Drawing Center, just printed 3-ring binders with monochrome or black and white copies. We moved to a pay-for-service model in 2009 as we expanded out of the US into Canada. And in 2010, Print on Demand launched. We started looking at the technology that was out in the marketplace and how much we were printing of those just basic black and white 3-ring binders, and started realizing, one, there was a cost associated with that, and every big company or even small company is looking for ways to reduce cost and still maintain effective in the marketplace and maintain their customer satisfaction. What we started realizing was that the technology was catching up to the point that those binders didn't necessarily make sense in every scenario as the iPad came along, or as laptops became more commonplace in the work environment versus being tied to a massive desktop that wasn't portable. So we launched Print on Demand to start to phase out those 3-ring binders and encourage our customers to go digital. We actually drove that train versus being reactionary to it, and in the process had the equipment and space and know-how to transition one type of business, which was black and white copies, to the on-demand business, which is now a full-service print shop we'll talk a little bit more about. 2011 is when that transition really began to digital, working with Adobe to make sure that their tools were easy to use for our customers at no cost to interact with the documents we created. As our scope evolved, we changed our name to Solution Support Group because we were no longer just national and we didn't deal with just drawings anymore. So we became the Solution Support Group, so we could basically make our umbrella a little bit larger and cover a lot of different things. We worked with Canon, which Bob will talk about in a little more, in the 2015 time period to create digital ordering platforms, streamlining our customer experience, and also looking for increased capacity and efficiency in our workflow. That paid off such large dividends that just last year, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of it, we were able to construct a brand new facility purpose-built for the printing, and it is a showpiece among print shops, just about anywhere. Canon has a habit of wanting to bring their customers by and show off all of our pretty equipment and our wonderful layout and the efficiency around it. I mean, they consulted along with our internal efficiency teams to make sure we were building a facility that not only met our current needs and was extremely efficient from workflow and commodity delivery, but also was planned to be able to expand and meet the needs 20 years down the road. This facility is built to be here much longer than any of myself or the staff and still meet the needs of whatever team is here doing the work. Paul, I think I got one more slide here.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. So touching on it just a second ago, but workflow design is the biggest key, our biggest challenge along the way, with any expansion and with any growth, as we went from black and white binders, which was a very low complexity product, to being a full service print shop. The product diversity went up and the bottlenecks became apparent in our workflow. When you only manufacture one product, it's very simple to put a workflow together for that. But when you have every job coming through being a variable product that can be anything on a menu of dozens of different options, and hundreds of options within those dozen or so products, it becomes very complicated. And we ramped that up within about 18 months and suffered some efficiency loss in the beginning and started reaching out to partners looking for some help with that efficiency. And that was before we even moved into our new plant. Our legacy systems were not designed to handle what we were doing. Our complexity of products had gone up and surpassed our growth, or rather our growth surpassed our complexity to maintain those products. We weren't designed around being a full service print operation. What we were offering was not enhancing the customer experience, and it was requiring a large amount of manual processing of files when it came in to get the job done. So essentially we had to take the bottleneck and break the bottle into pieces. Doing so, we put together an RFP that went out asking different vendors out there to look at what our needs were. And versus a very cost or metric driven RFP, we were looking for service along the way. So looking for that user-friendly and intuitive system that anybody, because we're an engineering and energy management company, we're not a print company. So most people don't understand the dynamics of printing. The system had to be very intuitive. It needed to be unlimited in its capacity, so we didn't suffer bottlenecks in the actual capacity of users during the day. It needed to be a self-serve environment. We needed to put the control of the ordering in the hands of the customer versus having to do the manual labor on our side. Because of the type of work that we do around data centers being a perfect example, but also a lot of government work, it had to be very secure. We handle a lot of sensitive data that in the wrong hands could create chaos on a global level. The touch points involved obviously had to be reduced. We were touching orders way too many times, from receiving emails to doing file prep to getting it ready to actually print the stuff and then printing it, getting it boxed and shipped. There were way too many touch points along the way. We were trying to eliminate those. We also had a lot of standalone systems in the mix. One to receive files, one to prepare files, one to send files to the actual presses to get them printed, another one for shipping. Lots of systems that did not talk to each other, which required a lot of manual data compilation to get any type of metrics for measurements. It needed to integrate into our existing equipment. We did at the time have primarily a Canon fleet, but it was a mixed fleet with other vendors as well, or other manufacturers at the time. And it needed to work with all of them. And last but not least, just like in anybody's world, we needed to reduce complexity. So to break that bottle into pieces, all of those touch points needed to be addressed. And that's where we went to Canon, because we had such a great relationship with them in the past and great success in getting ourselves expanded into the print on demand versus monochrome world of black and white copies. They were able to come to the table with a really great plan. And at this point, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Bob and let him talk about the analysis and how we came to these conclusions.
Thanks, Kris. Yeah, so before I mentioned a little bit, kind of what we've and how we helped Schneider, just a little bit about Canon. So most of you are familiar, Canon was a camera company, but a large part of our business is also we call business information solutions. And with that is printing solutions. So, desktop printers, inkjet toner, to, the office printers, we call them MFPs, or copiers that you're probably all familiar with in your operations. And then production printing equipment. And we have toner solutions and very high volume inkjet solutions for this production printing, high quality, high volume applications. And the challenges that Kris mentioned, within his organization are common challenge that many organizations have, once again, with this transformation of their print services. In the past, a print operation maybe printed, 10 jobs a day. These jobs would be maybe very long runs. So they would run for a while on the press, and they would have good productivity, and they would only have to maybe manage, 10 jobs coming into their operation and processing those 10 jobs. Well, as it moved towards, more and more digital, on demand, short run, it could be a tenfold increase in the number of jobs that an operation needs to process. Rather than 10, we see organizations now doing maybe 100 different types of jobs a day. As Kris mentioned, the diversity as well on top of that, business cards, flyers, newsletters, reports. So the need to be able to efficiently process those files coming from varying customers within the organization, diverse types of applications efficiently in a very high automated process is a challenge that many organizations are faced with. And what we've developed and what I manage is our solution services group in the production printing space is an assessment program to help customers look at their business and their operations. And Paul, if you want to go to the next slide. So this is a little bit of an overview of the business assessment program that we developed and we've implemented at Schneider Electric. And, the couple of goals of what we try to accomplish is really to help organizations, look at the short term, but also the long-term objectives of what they're doing in their operation, how the jobs are coming in, how they're processing them, what are the types of applications they're printing today and will be printing in the future, and then their overall requirements and the impact within their organization. Kris and a lot of managers are, very, very familiar with this, but I think it also brings to them some great validation of other eyes looking at their operation and kind of confirming some of their beliefs. We're involved with hundreds of organizations, so to bring that expertise and that knowledge to the table has extreme value to our customers. And then to provide a subjective assessment of their current capabilities, their operations. So we bring a team of people in. We call walk the workflow. So we spend time with their workflows, their processes, their organizations, and even interview their customers. So in Schneider's case, we talked with Kris's internal customers that were submitting work into their print center and got feedback on their experiences and what challenges and what they liked in their operations. And then from there, we try to help prioritize an action plan with different solution options, as well as an implementation plan. As you implement a lot of these, and we mentioned earlier, you have the initial implementation, but how do you manage that, and how do you continue to automate it over time? Diving in too fast and trying to conquer too much could be a challenge. So what's the right amount of change? What's the right amount of solutions to be implemented, and then how do you move that forward with different phases over time? Paul? This is the process that we have and developed, just to kind of show you a little bit the approach that we take. And in this particular case with Schneider, we looked at the three primary areas. Input. Once again, the type of work that was coming in, how it was coming into their operations, the types of customers they're serving, how they are, preparing those files. So as you're preparing these printing files that could be very complex, that there could be a lot of manual work in preparing the different pages, assembling the electronic documents. So those processes, and then the actual printing and the fulfillment. So those were kind of the key three areas that we, looked at when we conducted our assessment. And then you can see below is our process. So we always start off with some planning work with our customers, some pre-site surveys to collect some data before we get there, and make sure we have the right objectives and alignment in place. So when we do arrive with the team, and there was three of us that spent a couple of days in Schneider's operations, is as I mentioned, to kind of do the walkthrough, some management roundtable input, walk the process, and then conduct the various interviews with people within the operations and people that are interacting with the operations. From there, we develop what we call a priority modeling, where we, analyze our findings, prepare a report, and then, present that report to the management team. Paul, if you can go to the next slide, is a little overview of, the assessment report, right? So once again, the objectives, we do provide, which we find, very helpful, an executive summary. So it's a pretty detailed report, but for the executive team, there's a very concrete snapshot of the operation. We actually do a scoreboard as we kind of looked at those, input, prepare, print, and mail. We look at some different subcategories within that, and try to help evaluate and benchmark that versus other industry organizations that are doing similar types of services, to kind of, once again, give the feedback of, in some cases, you're not alone. Other people are challenged with these same problems, or maybe you're doing something that's, ahead of the, your peers. So let's call that out. Or if this is an area that you're behind, let's call that out as well. And, do the workflow analysis, and I'll show you in a minute a little bit of a snapshot of what that analysis, part of that analysis looked like for Schneider's case, and then develop some different solution requirements. So in Schneider's case, we presented a number of different options of how they could tackle their workflow processes and implement new web order submission. A key question that Kris had and his organization had is, do we go with something that's cloud-based? Do we go with something that's self-hosted? And then how do we automate that into production? So we reviewed a couple different options for them, pros and cons of each option, and collectively discussed that with them to figure out what they felt most comfortable with. Paul, if you want to go to the next slide there. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot, one of the artifacts that we put together. Right, we tried to really understand in a very short time their process, their organization, benchmarking some work that's coming through their operation, and some of the blue bubbles are some of the areas where we say, hey, there's some areas for improvement. So we find with most organizations, they know their work, they know their organization, and they know what they're doing very, very well, but it really helps to put that into an overview assessment that really helps them quantify and see their operation and see maybe the steps and the processes that are in place and where they can potentially reduce some of those steps. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Kris to talk a little bit about where they are today after they implemented some of the solutions that we discussed with them with the assessment program.
All right, thanks, Bob. Paul, you can go ahead and go to the next slide there. So unlike some companies in the past or organizations in the past, we drove the digital transition as opposed to being reactionary to the writing on the wall that it was going to happen. We were proactive and owned that transition and actually pushed the transition as much as possible to shift away from that black and white 3-ring binder business we were doing. All along the way, monitoring that shift in the business, when we did it, we actually were leading the electrical industry in the United States through this change. A lot of folks had not embraced cloud computing and cloud delivery of documentation. And we were right there on the front of that, to the point that our competition actually had to catch up just a little bit. What we were able to do, because we were eliminating so much printing at the time of those black and white copies, was start to use that savings that was being generated to expand our operation, gain not only more capabilities, but also to gain capacity along the way. And then we started turning around and looking inside for more opportunity. At the time, the print facility was located in a gigantic office building here in Nashville, Tennessee, and my team literally walked around looking at people's desks and pointing at documents going, where'd you get that printed? And looking for opportunity. If any of you work for a large company, you're surely aware of how difficult it is to communicate to everybody when you have something going on that's worthy of shouting from the rooftops about, and we are no exception to that. So word of mouth and a lot of very small group or one-on-one meetings to talk about our products in the beginning as we turned into an on-demand shop was how we got the word out there. As that took off, obviously, we had to automate the process to be able to gain that capacity through the help of Canon and the study and solutions that we implemented. And here we are many years later, after looking at the chart of growth there, as we went with the two products that were black and white and turned into digital. We're at the end of last year, well into the 90% range of total digital delivery on those. We are in a constant state of analysis using the BPM workflow, always looking at how can we improve, how can we automate, and then circling back to the beginning and starting over. It's almost a mindset on a daily basis around the team as to, you know, this is how we got the job done, how can we do it better? So it's not just about digitization at this point. We've done a great job of that and continue to do that and work with our partners, but there will always be a need for print. We just work to make sure we are staying relevant in the world of print versus hanging on to legacy products that really don't have much need anymore. Paul, let's go ahead and move on to the next one there.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about it, but now let's look at some of the numbers on the efficiency here. Before the digitization was really a big push, the print operation had 6 employees between 2010 and 2013 that handled about $70,000 worth of sales per person per year. As our capabilities grew, so did the demand for capacity. So we had to staff up between 2013 and 2015. So we were up to 9 employees, and they were handling about $100,000 per person throughout the course of a year. Then the transition to the new solution provided by Canon to handle all those bullets of our RFP for workflow efficiency and reduced touch points and things like that. And from 2015 to now, we're reduced on our headcount from where we used to be, where there's only 6 employees, but they now handle over $200,000 worth of business per person on an annual basis. And as a result, looking to the right of this slide, you know, we were able to accomplish all of the different bullets that we were looking for within our needs analysis in the very beginning to create that single platform that is customized in appearance, but provided by Canon. That is not only the storefront and the shopping portal for our customers, but it's also the back end for us to analyze files, make sure we have all of our costs in line, and then also to interact with our fleet of equipment. And we can actually remotely operate our fleet for a lot of the items that we do. So we don't even hire people with print experience anymore. We are now looking for people with computer experience and the ability to multitask. The efficiency through the coordinated fleet that we now have in our new plant, basically all the machines are the same. We can teach that very simply. It's the technical aptitude that we look for a lot of times. Also, flexible file types was something that was brought to the table. It's amazing what people will send you and ask you to print at times. And there were issues with the old manual system on converting those file types and getting them ready to print, where the new digital system that we use will actually take those file types, convert them, whatever they are, into what the final file type output needs to be, and have them ready to print without us having to manually do that. So again, reducing touch points. And then finally, it became a parallel customer experience compared to a lot of the other systems that we have to use within the company. We were at the time in 2014, 2015, moving a lot of our systems to a single sign-on experience instead of having to remember 60 plus logins and passwords. And the Canon system that we brought in was able to do that. So again, reducing the touch point, reducing the complexity, reducing the time involved, and also reducing my headcount. We did it through attrition. We didn't do it through layoffs. We were able to redeploy people within the company, or some of them moved on to other opportunities outside the company. But to be able to do more business per person using the analysis and tools that came out of that analysis through our partnership with Canon. I believe I may have.
Kris, the other thing you had on the other slide, right, that even makes it even a bigger impact. I think you had in the last one, you had about the average job price almost came down, right?
It did. I did skip right over that.
Yeah, so double the average revenue, so to say, sales per head count, but also it's probably a quadruple in the number of orders you had to process to achieve that.
Correct. The time spent, labor involved in producing a job went down, along with the waste involved, because the system was a lot more clean when it came to process, so we didn't end up with more waste. There were a lot of different items along the way that you save a little bit of money in a lot of different places. It ends up being a lot of money, and we did reduce the average price per item coming out of the print shop. And again, these numbers are a little more dated than they were, or than they are now. It continues to grow. Our cost per shipment continues to go down on an individual item level because the efficiency gains of the system with Canon, and then the changes to the fleet, and now with a new plant, every day that goes by, we just get better and better at what we do. And we've been doing it for a while. So there's, you're always improving, just like any process. You can't rest on your laurels for very long. That's what weekends are for. Okay, Paul, I think I got one more here.
Yep.
Oh, actually, yes, this one goes back to you all. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kris and and Rob. That was great. And to our audience members, as Kris mentioned, they were very proactive in embracing digital transformation and adapting to all the disruption that was taking place. So much so that their story has actually been featured in several publications, including the February 2018 issue of Implant Graphics, which kind of talked about their state-of-the-art facility and the new solutions that they incorporated to, totally transform, the way that they were printing materials in their environment. We also have several other pieces created. In fact, there was a white paper created by Infotrends, one of our industry analysts, which kind of spoke about all the best practices that were taking place at Schneider Electric. And we also have a video case study that's been published as well. These materials will be provided to you as a follow-up from the event through AME, the Association of Manufacturing Excellence. And I think at this point, I will transfer this presentation back to Tim, our moderator, to kind of cover some any questions that you might have. Tim?
Great, thank you, Paul. And now we'll review any questions you may have. If you have any questions, please submit them on the right side of your screen. And I see one now. What is the biggest challenge Schneider faced in implementing the new workflow process?
This is Kris. I'll go ahead and try this one. I don't think there was a biggest challenge. I think they were all fairly equal in importance. Obviously, there was the who moved my cheese factor, or change management, to get people to recognize that we were doing business and putting what seemed at first to them like more work in their hands, but at the end of the day, it brought so many improvements to the process that it helped. The other big challenge was just the typical corporate red tape to get through all of that, to be able to, we were able to do the analysis with Canon and work behind the scenes to vet out and prove that there was a need and there was a solution. But then to get that final okay and then start working through all of the internal red tape to get servers placed inside the firewall, to get everybody to sign off on purchase agreements and things like that, because we are the lone print entity within the company. So there were a lot of people that had to put signatures on paper that just didn't even understand what we did for the company. And that's what implants fight that battle all the time, of, why are we in this business yet we're in the print business too? And we fight those battles internally on a daily basis. So that was a big hurdle on the front end. On the back end of it, it actually went really smooth because the analysis was so good and so many of the touch points were addressed before we ever started implementing systems. The Canon engineers who helped set up the system for us, all of the folks that were working with us to get us up and running, which was a fairly lengthy process of close to 6 months from the moment we put software and fired up servers to actually releasing it to customers. It took time to get it all put together, but the Canon team really understood my business at a level that even I didn't understand as much of what they had found out in the analysis on some of the tertiary levels of different products and workflow.
This is Bob again. Yeah, one of the things that we do in the assessment report as well is we put a whole risk assessment together, right? So as you implement this solution, here's some of the risk and here's some of the mitigation recommendations to help minimize the risk, which is could be around employee training, or we see many organizations try to implement what we refer to in Kris's case like a web to workflow, a solution that brings jobs in and then processes them and sends them to the printing device. And a lot of organizations fail because they don't have an internal champion that's managing and seeing that everyone has very, very busy days, and this comes up on top of that, right? So it's like one of the key risks that we always try to identify is you need to have that internal champion that's going to drive that. We have project managers that help with the implementation, but internally, if you're not having the person owning it and staying on top of it, it's going to fall on its face. And Kris was a phenomenal internal champion at Schneider, so it went really, really smooth.
All right, great. We do have another question. What step in the process was most critical or important?
Bob, you want to weigh in and see if I can argue with you?
Well, I guess I would say as you mentioned a little bit too was kind of internal buy-in. So as I mentioned earlier on, one of the pieces that we had to help with through the assessment was helping weigh the benefit of implementing a cloud solution, versus a customer-hosted implemented solution. And there was many benefits for Schneider by implementing the solution on site and the automation that they can get from one solution that's taking orders in and processing them. But as Kris mentioned, getting the buy-in from IT is a challenge. So it seemed like from us that was probably one of the the biggest hurdles that we really had to try to help Kris with justification on. And then from our project implementation team, kind of working with their IT group and how to set those up and ensuring that the security and redundancy and everything was in place.
Yeah, the other thing I would comment is, in today's world, we enjoy instant delivery and instant gratification in multiple levels, whether it's going out to eat or just gathering data off your mobile device or things like that. And sometimes you have to remember you do work for a large company and you move at the speed of business, not at the speed you would like to move at. We were growing so quickly during this process, it did become frustrating for my team at times of, boy, when is the system ever going to come online and when are we ever going to start using it? Because we are being bombarded. And there was about a 6 to 9 month period there where we were still having to take orders the old way, but the volume was difficult to handle. We had to bring in extra headcount to handle that volume. And that's where that 9 headcount kind of came from at one point in our slide there. That was a challenge. You have to be prepared to take your time and get it right the first time. And that was a challenge because we were all itching for it, going, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? And at the end of the day, very thankful we were patient and launched a product that was really about 95% ready for prime time versus I've seen product launches in the past, both internally and with other companies, that they'll get to about 75% and say, we'll fix the bugs with the customer feedback and go ahead and launch it. And we didn't have that luxury, and I'm glad we didn't.
All right. And we have a couple questions by different people on the line, both relating to culture. So I'm going to ask both of the questions at the same time, and I think we'd probably be able to answer those with one answer, perhaps. One is what cultural hurdles do you face in the transformation journey? And the other one is, what type of corporate culture did you have before and after transformation?
So could you repeat the very beginning of that? Your audio broke up just a little bit, Tim.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, the first question is, what cultural hurdles did you face in the transformation journey? Okay. The other one is, what type of culture did you have before and after the transformation?
So we were actually we were benefited by an ongoing company program at the time. We were ahead of the program in our start of the analysis and needs assessment of what we were trying to accomplish. And as we were going through the build out of the software and getting ready to launch and even some of the analysis, the company had actually on a global basis stepped up and said, they stepped up and said, we're going to start focusing on digital transition on a lot of our other things that go on within the company. And so the cultural change and the shift to what we were doing was actually pretty easy, other than just the training side of it, where we put a new process in place.
Okay. And one other quick question. Do you have any words of wisdom for other organizations thinking about a digital transformation?
Embrace it.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're going to get left behind or unemployed. Which one would you like? If you're not moving to the cloud now, if you're not working on digitization, I'm in the paper business. Digital is exactly opposite of what I do, but we embraced it and we came out much stronger and much more powerful and assured in our role within the company by doing so, as opposed to ignoring it and hoping it went away.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for all the questions that you submitted. And thank you, Kris, Bob, and Paul, for a very insightful presentation. We'll be sending a recorded link for the webinar replay to each of you next week. And this brings our webinar to a close. Our next scheduled webinar is free to everyone and will be on Thursday the 28th, titled Managing a Lean, Efficient Supply Chain, presented by Doug Carlberg. Please visit ame.org under AME Events and Training tab to click the AME webinars or click AME webinars for more information and to register. Please don't forget to fill out the short survey that will be in your inbox. And thank you for everyone for attending, and have a great day.